Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Walk Off Whiskey here on the Till Mets Do Us Part family of channels, if you will. John Sapanaro coming to you guys from North Hollywood, California. This is episode 2 of Walk Off Whiskey. Of course, we took last week off because we had the Queens baseball convention. I was out of town. I was traveling to New York. I was thinking about doing the show from the hotel and then just thought better of it. Didn't want to force it in. We had a really long show, a big show of Till Mets Do Us Part on that Wednesday, and then the Queens baseball convention, obviously a great event, but it's a long day for Mets fans. There's a lot of overlap between this show and the Queens baseball convention in terms of people who are going to interact with both. So thought it was better off to, even though we took our first episode, we took our first steps, and you don't want to stop that momentum. I thought it was better off to just take a pause and then get back to you here this week. But happy to be back. Happy to be doing this thing. Got the whiskey poured already, so cheers to all of you. And, without further ado, let's get into the show, shall we? I mean, look, one of the biggest things that I've talked about in the genesis of this show is that I would like it ultimately to be completely driven by all of you. We talked about it when I first announced the show, talked about it on Till Mets Do Us Part, as I kind of was able to dive deeper into the show. And then talked about it 2 weeks ago on the inaugural episode. So I'm hoping that you guys eventually, that the chat will be as lively and as active so that I don't really have to have an agenda. That's why there's no scroll at the bottom of the screen, like we do for Till Mets Do Us Part, trying to just completely remove ourselves from the most topical things that everybody feels like they need to talk about. However, until we get there, or if that's what you want to talk about, that's what we're going to do. So jump into the comments here and shout out the folks who are watching live. Got about 40 folks, which, by the way, I didn't get this StreamYard set up until a couple hours ago. I just had a lot going on this week. So we'll see what the numbers are like. But either way, I'm happy to interact with all of you. We have Armand is amazing. We have Truman Quinn in the house, Brad, Ethan. We have the media goon himself, Keith Blacknick. We have Milo Mitchell. And that's it as far as live commenters go. But a lot of other folks watching behind the scenes. So like the video, all that stuff. Subscribe to the channel. Because, you won't miss an episode of whether we do Walk Off Whiskey, whether we're doing Till Mets Do Us Part, whatever the case may be. And right on cue, Cindy, Shark Vader Studios jumps in saying, "What's up, chat? What's up, John?" I do like Keith saying, yes, it's a good thing that I rested last Friday because the Queens Baseball Convention is a long day for all of us. Certainly, it's not longer for anybody than it is for Keith because he was there the day before. He's setting up all year planning for it. So I don't want to complain about it because Keith is working his ass off, as is everybody else. But, Keith is doing a tremendous amount of work. So it's a privilege to be there. But then my flights got all messed up on Thursday. My flights got all messed up on Sunday. I had to leave Saturday night right after the QBC. I didn't even get to say goodbye to most people. So I agree with you, Keith. It's a good thing that I rested a little bit. Brad saying have to get used to the intro. What do you mean? Obviously we don't have a song. Maybe we will at some point, but what is it? Is it just because it's so fundamentally different from the Till Mets Do Us Part theme song? That's what I want to know. So while I give you an opportunity to answer that, check in with Milo. Want to hear your takes on the Cohen tweet this morning. And who do you think it was directed at? I like this because this is kind of where I wanted to start. Obviously, we could talk about the Mets-Yankee connection, the channeling of talent from the Bronx to Queens, if you will. I think this is really good. I think Cohen is not shy, right? Like a couple of years ago, when Steven Matz spurned the Mets in negotiations, he went nuclear on Twitter. Mets signed Max Scherzer. It's massive, F you to everybody out there. And he's done this before where he has, put the target on himself. And look, he's tweeted things where he says like the quote unquote the right things too. Like at the end of the season, things didn't go the way anybody would have wanted. He basically acknowledged that, says we have to do better. I have to do better. All that stuff that you want to hear from the owner. I like this. I don't like a meddlesome owner, right? A lot of the talking points have been over the last couple of weeks since the Diaz and Alonso departures. A lot of people wanted Cohen to step in and Cohen to be the guy who gets the deals done and on all this stuff. Make Stearns sign Alonso because of what he means to the team. I prefer an owner that is not meddlesome in that regard. That's just me, because I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, the best owners are the guys who write the checks and kind of get out of the way. You can compare it to Jerry Jones in Dallas, who thinks he can run the football ops. He can't. You can compare it to Dolan, who all those years with the Knicks and with the Rangers, but specifically with the Knicks, thought that he was the basketball mind, the genius. And hell, even here with the Mets, Jeff Wilpon thought he was the baseball ops guy. He did. Now, they empowered people in those roles, but Jeff Wilpon was probably the one really pulling the strings. They were so keyed into what was going on with the fan base and what was being said at the time on WFAN and stuff like that, where, it's almost too meddlesome. So I don't really want somebody who's going to be that hands-on. I like that Cohen has this, I've hired you, you're my general or whatever, and I've empowered you to go do the job. You can go do it. But I do think in this instance, it's not a bad thing that he stepped out and said what he said, because to the point of who it's directed to, I think it's directed to the reports. I think it was very clear. I think he was trying to be savvy enough where he didn't name drop a reporter and drag him through the mud. But I think Cohen was pissed in that, basically just saying listen, you guys can speculate on payroll all you want. First of all, you're wrong. Second of all, this is where it's been roughly the last 3 years, is probably where we're going to be again. And third of all, you're not even taking into account the things that aren't factored in yet, the arbitration increases and all the other little kind of subtle things that we all know about. But it is true. Even us as fans, even the people who study, teams' salaries and things like that, who really know down, you don't know until the salary is officially set for certain players. And we can, speculate on what certain guys might get or whatever the case may be. And then there's the contract renewal bonuses and all this stuff. You don't really know. None of us truly know. We have a good idea of the ballpark, pretty close to where each team's salary is going to be, but we don't actually know where it is once it's even all said and done. So I think for them to, I think it was Mike Puma, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, to wildly speculate that it's going to be lower than it was. Based on what, dude? Based on what? That's my question. Odd Villain in the house saying, shout out to Kelly's Pub in Flushing. Yes, shout out to Kelly's Pub in Flushing. Mets bar that Odd Villain introduced me to over the QBC weekend. So shout out to him. Shout out to Kelly's, 100%. Thank you, Keith. I am a road warrior, maybe not as much as I was before, but, I can still do it. I can still roll with it. Armand just saying, I hate the snow. Snow is nice when you don't have to deal with it. You know what I mean? Snow is nice. And I don't mean I live in Southern California now, we don't get snow. I mean, snow is nice if you don't have to clean it. Snow is nice if you don't have to go to work in it. Snow is nice if you don't have to worry about which side your car is parked on so the plow doesn't block you in. Snow is nice it's nice while it's snowing, and then the next day it's brutal, especially if you live in a place like New York where it's I lived for most of my life near above ground trains, above ground subways, which I guess is an oxymoron. But point being, we were expected to go to work the next day. And you're I can't get to work. I can't. They're well, yesterday was the snow day. Today, you've got to be back at work. I'm dude, my train is snowed out. And they're you figure it out. And there are other places that get worse snow that aren't as hustle and bustle as New York is, that are yeah, it snowed. So, take a couple days work from home. Everything will be all good. Or you just get in your car and you drive safely to work. Commuting from the outer boroughs to Manhattan when there's any kind of significant snowfall makes me feel this same sentiment that Armand has, which is I hate the snow. Let's see what else we got here. Truman Quinn saying, after we signed Soto, I wanted Cohen to go full Man City and sign an ace. Listen, that's fair, Truman. I don't disagree with you. But my question to you would be, who? Which ace over the last since the Soto signing? So just since last offseason. And I'll even give you players who I don't remember the exact timeline, but players who may have signed before Soto, technically, right? So like in the same offseason last year, but may have signed before. Like we know Max Fried signed with the Yankees after Soto left the Yankees. I don't remember when Corbin Burns signed and things like that. But like my question is, who over the last 2 seasons, aside from one guy who would not have been a sign, would have been a trading situation, which was Garrett Crochet, which the Mets tried to get, but they did not have the farm system at the time that Boston had, or at least in order to do that, like maybe we have Garrett Crochet, but we don't have Nolan McLean or Jonah Tom. I don't know if I'm willing to make that trade not knowing what I know now. You know, at the time, we would have all been giddy about it probably, and Crochet is great, but I don't know, man. It's like, I understand, but like, who else? I think the guy is the guy who we're all waiting on with bated breath, who probably won't be traded this offseason, but maybe the Mets will sign next offseason, which is Tarek Skubal. Brad saying he's glad that he didn't step in, meaning Cohen stepping in to negotiate with Pete and Diaz and stuff like that. Milo, whose question I was answering initially, said, I agree. I love for Cohen to let Stearns make the baseball decisions, but make sure he knows the checkbook is open for use to build a strong team every year. And I think that's what it is, man. I think that's what we have, right? Like, I mean, look, I know this is a what have you done for me lately business. Sports is, life is now. But, I mean, we did sign Soto to the richest contract that has ever been offered in North American professional sports. We did offer Yamamoto the offseason before the biggest contract that has ever been offered to a pitcher in Major League Baseball. We got Soto. We didn't get Yamamoto. I think, you know, Yamamoto was always going to go to the Dodgers unless they wouldn't meet the deal. So I think it is open. I think the wallet is open for the right deal. And I think where Cohen steps back is he allows Stearns to decide what the right deal is. And that's why, and I don't want to like really super get into this today, but that's why something we've been talking about for weeks on this show. I don't like when the criticism becomes, well, Cohen signed Soto, not David Stearns. David Stearns signed Soto. A contract of that magnitude, of course, the owner's involved. First of all, it's always the owner's money. The owner is always going to be responsible for signing the checks and signing off on the payroll, to Milo's point here. But I don't know, this thought that like David Stearns, who is not by my estimation, but by like everybody in baseball, like a super bright baseball guy. And he was from like the day Omar Minaya brought him in to be an intern with the Mets front office all those years ago. The thought that this guy doesn't recognize or didn't recognize or didn't care because he doesn't like to spend money, that Juan Soto was a generational talent available in his mid-20s and like kind of didn't want him, but Steve Cohen was like, no, I want that guy. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's a bridge too far. When I say it like that, and I say it that plainly, even if you are Stearns' harshest critic, you have to agree that there's some truth to what I'm saying. Check back in here. Media Goon keeps saying snow is nice at a ski resort. That's fair. Truman, the only snow in LA is a bag of Michael Keaton. I like that. I've never heard it referred to in that regard. But nicely done. Way to keep it so we don't get in trouble, I think. I don't know if that's a thing gets you in trouble on YouTube, but you know, just we'll be careful. At _Peter, who I believe is a new commenter, which welcome to the show, back to back saying right, and then followed up by saying Cohen is not cheap. I think that's very, very, very clear. Cindy saying a lot of fans continue to beat up Stearns over Crochet, forgetting to realize couldn't compete with the Red Sox at the time. I think that's true. I think, again, maybe we could have, but I think competing with the Red Sox to get Garrett Crochet would probably mean no Nolan McLean. And that's, look, you know, the hope is that McLean is Crochet, right? Or better. But you're giving up massive assets in terms of prospects. And then the Red Sox turn around and sign Crochet to a big deal. And this is a guy who was like in his first year as a starting pitcher, and there were durability concerns. Crochet's great. He's probably like the fourth or fifth best starting pitcher in baseball, right? Like number one is either Skubal or Skeens. Pick your poison. I don't care. They're both great. So one of them is one of them is two. Number three is probably, what's his name out in San Francisco, Logan Webb, who might be like the most underrated starting pitcher in the sport. And then you're getting into territory where, you could start to entertain the idea that, Garrett Crochet is in there. He's 4, he's 5, he's 6, whatever. It would have been really, really difficult to get him at the time. Keith, the media goon, saying Dodgers paying $170 million luxury tax for the 2025 season. I think I just saw the Mets are paying like 91 million or something like that. Which is also a ton. And that's the thing that makes me go like, guys, really? You guys think this is just like the Wilpons, or we would have been better off without Cohen? So, Carson, every bad signing is Stearns. Every good signing is Cohen. Mets fans would rather be right about Stearns because of his background in being in Milwaukee. I agree. I think there is a section of Mets fans that, and I've said this before and I've tweeted this, so pardon me for repeating myself, but I think there is a section of Mets fans who said exactly what Carson is saying, which is every good signing was Cohen, every bad signing is Stearns. I think this season, that was bad enough because I think that's unfair to your president of baseball ops, but at least that was results-based. Now the criticism is like vibes-based. It's gotten to the point where it's every signing I don't like personally. I'm not waiting for results. I'm not waiting for the outcome. Every signing I think is bad is Stearns. Every signing I think would be a good idea, that's Cohen. For example, Jorge Polanco, people who didn't like it, that's Stearns. That's Stearns being cheap. That's Stearns, he sucks. But Pete Alonso, you wanted to bring him back. Well, that would have been a good deal. That would have been Cohen. You can't do that. It's wild. Chrissy saying, I don't see any whiskey. It's right here. I promise. It's right here. I do have to find the time so these shows don't go super long to make sure I'm drinking the whiskey. I envision that these shows should be like 35 to 45 minutes. And last week was like an hour 10 because I was just talking to you guys, and you don't want dead air, right? You don't want it. I don't want it. It's like weird, but there's no obvious time to take a sip. So that's something that we're going to work on going forward. When I was doing comedy, if you have a drink on stage, whether it's an alcoholic drink or it's just water, you find time to take sips when you get big laughs. And then it's like, okay, you let the laughs kind of breathe and let the laughs do their thing. And you go and you take a sip of your drink. This is a little different. This is like doing comedy on Zoom. Which was not great. This is better than that. @_Peter said, I think Stearns wants to see what the prospects have before spending big. I don't disagree, but I don't agree fully. And what I mean is, I think there are some prospects or players that are moving out of the prospect territory, like Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, Acuna, those guys from the old guard. I think he knows now. He's had enough observation to know like what he thinks of them. Do I think he wants to jettison all of them for the sake of doing it? No, that's clear, because I think he could have moved any and all of those players if he just wanted to get rid of them. And I think they all have some major league talent. I don't think any one of those guys is like, oh man, this guy's an absolute bust. Now, I don't know if any of them will, including Beatty, I don't know if any of them will ever be a star player, let alone like a true, really reliable regular. But I think it's clear that they're all like some semblance of a major league player, even if it's a taxi squad guy or a bench guy who you can kind of, use in certain spots. So it's not that he's waiting to see what these guys have. I think he's acknowledging, and Carson and I were talking about this at one point off air, that Steve Cohen has been spending money like crazy since he took over the team. And that's great because he has it, right? He's worth over $20 billion. And listen, man, I'm not going to take up collections for billionaires. They should be spending their money on stuff like making baseball teams good. If like great, please make the Mets good. And whatever. My point is, so I don't care how he spends his money, and I don't care how much money he wastes trying to make the Mets a good team. But my point is this: if you're him, you're going, well, I've been at the top of the league in payroll every year, and what do I have to show for it? 2 playoff appearances, one that was miraculous we ever went on, and another that ended in the most piss poor way possible, while I'm also paying $90 million in luxury tax this year and like 300 and something million dollars in luxury tax since I took over the team, which is basically Steve Cohen taking money and throwing it out the window because the Mets don't get the benefit of that. It's just money he's giving away, essentially. So I think what we're seeing here is the acknowledgement that you have to build an infrastructure. Now, whether you use those prospects when they're at their peak value to go and get established players, or you use them on your team to help you win, but you need them to work for you. And the way you get prospects to work for you in trades, if they're on your team, it's obvious how they work for you, right? They become good baseball players. But how they work for you in trades is making sure you don't trade them too early, making sure you don't trade them in the wrong package for the wrong player. And too early would be kind of like what we were talking about with Garrett Crochet before. If the Mets turned around last year before McClain and Tong had their big breakout, if they needed to outbid the Red Sox, maybe they trade Tong and McClain for Crochet plus more. And now where are we? Yeah, we've acquired a young potential ace pitcher. That's great. But we've now paid him a lot of money. You have to hope that he is what he is, again, coming off of the fact that he's not been a long-time starter. And then the best way to get ace-level pitching is to develop it. It's expensive to acquire via trade. It's expensive to pay for. So now you've set yourself back kind of in 2 ways. The other thing you have to be careful about is when you make a trade, whether the trade works out in your favor or not, what did you do in terms of value? So everybody dragged Jim Duquette, and rightfully so. I don't know if you saw the proposed trade that he put on the table on SNY. I think it was 2 nights ago for Nick Pivetta, but it was insane. This is a guy who famously traded Scott Kazmir for Victor Zambrano. Now, I know Victor Zambrano didn't work out. I know Victor Zambrano got hurt. And I know Scott Kazmir went on to have a nice career, but he was never the guy that you thought he would be. But Scott Kazmir, if you go back far enough, was like the best pitching prospect in the sport. And you traded him for Victor Zambrano? Yeah, we'll hold a long pause on that. Victor Zambrano was a good pitcher. He wasn't even near the top of the league. So it's like, you're not maximizing your return. Now look, Cano is gone. Diaz is gone. The players that the Mets traded to Seattle never really panned out in any kind of big way. The Mets obviously won that trade. They got a lot of great years out of Diaz, and Jared Kelenic never, is probably going to be out of baseball soon. So you can't really complain about that deal. But at the time that they made it, the Mets traded their number one organizational prospect for a bad contract and a closer who, while great, the Mets were not a closer away from winning the World Series or competing for a World Series at that point. So yes, the Mets won the deal, but when you're talking about making these prospects work for you in a trade, you kind of can't do worse than that value-wise. Now, again, it worked out in the Mets' favor. The Mets won that deal, no complaints. But you talk about asset allocation, like Jared Kelenic should have been in a deal to get the Mets a starting pitcher, an everyday player in the lineup. And maybe you can't do it as a 1-for-1, but it already wasn't a 1-for-1. Now, yeah, Diaz did have a lot of control left. That's fine in terms of team control. But, man, that's some of the critiques that you could lay at the floor of at the foot of a Mason Miller deal with the Padres now. Like, would I like to have Mason Miller on this team? Sure. Mason Miller has 4 years of control left. He throws 105 miles an hour. He's not the best closer in baseball, but he could be. At any point, he could be the best closer in baseball. Would I like to have him? Yeah. Mets tried to get him like crazy. I know that for a fact through people that I've talked to. I don't have sources, but I've talked to people who do have sources. Mets tried like crazy to get Mason Miller at the deadline. But much like the Red Sox did for Crochet, the Padres put a player on the table who's like a top 5 prospect in baseball, and the Mets couldn't match it. So now, less than a year later, to get that player, Mason Miller, from the Padres, you're going to have to put up a prospect of that caliber. So I ask you, you want Mason Miller, and not you, Peter, because you haven't mentioned that, but just you in general. If you want Mason Miller, you going to trade Carson Benj for Mason Miller? Carson Benj plus Carson Benj, Jonah Tong for Mason Miller. I don't know, man. I don't know if that's good value. Carson says, if the Mets sign Tucker today, Cohen would be praised. Stearns is the go-to collateral damage no matter what. Very well said. Very accurate. Completely agree with everything you're saying there. Let me see who else we got here. I like this one from Joshua Likes Graham Crackers. If Zach Gallen didn't have an annoying qualifying offer attached to him, Mets probably would have signed him. Maybe. I know Zach Gallen's coming off a bad year. Zach Gallen's a good pitcher. And if you're looking for a guy who has ace upside, I don't know if he's a true ace. I think the word ace gets used too much. But you're looking for a guy who has number 1 in your rotation upside, it's Zach Gallen. But we just saw this with the Michael King deal with the Padres. The qualifying offer, and if you're a luxury tax offender the way the Mets are, the qualifying offer and what you have to give up to sign that player, listen, if that player is Juan Soto, you do it 1,000 times out of 1,000. Plus, you're getting him for 15 years, so you figure it out. The Mets probably want to give somebody like Zach Gallen a prove-it deal. And what's a good prove-it deal? 1+1, right? 1 year guaranteed plus an opt-out after this year if you pitch well. I don't know if that's worth it to give a player and then give up the draft picks and then give up the international signing money that you have to give up when there's a qualifying offer attached. So I think the word annoying here for the qualifying offer is a good one. I think it's a good use of the word because it is frustrating. Because again, if you want to sign a player to a big deal, you don't care about it. You really don't. And if that player is age appropriate, it's fine. But people were mad, not just Mets fans, even Yankee fans were mad that like more teams, basically if your team didn't get Michael King on this fairly reasonable 3-year deal, I think it's an overpay in terms of dollars a little bit, but he got 2 opt-outs. So who was going to give up the picks and give up the money and then have Michael King have a good year, which is what you want? Like if you're the Mets and you sign Michael King, you're hoping that you get Michael King from 2024, who could be your ace. If he's Michael King from 2024, he's opting out. So now you gave him $25 million this year. He opts out. You also gave up 2 picks. You also gave up international money. It's a lot. So I think this Zach Gallen point is a good one for sure. Let's see. Armand saying, if you want Mason Miller, just look at the trade the O's did today to get Shane Baz, who has 3 years of control. Yep, that's a pretty good comp. You're looking at that's what it would take. Carson saying, all right, I got a show to do. Shout out to Mets Weekly. So I'm out. And by the way, shout out Carson, who's probably already gone because it's from a couple minutes ago, but he's texted me and said, I got a show at like 7:30, but I'm going to jump in for a little bit. And man of his word. I know Carson gets under a lot of people's skin and he does it intentionally. I know a lot of you guys don't agree with him. You don't like him, but good dude. It says, John, when you get a chance, check out the group chat. I'm dying laughing right now. We have a group chat with a lot of Mets content creators. So I'm wondering what's going on over there. The Media Goon saying, I do like how Mets fans are starting to realize that Steve Cohen is Lex Luthor when Luthor ran for president. Or Wilson Fisk, when Wilson Fisk ran for mayor, if you're more of a Marvel Comics guy than a DC Comics guy. I know Keith is a Media Goon is down on Cohen, and not down on him, but has always had fair criticisms of Cohen that I think he is saying starting to see the light of day. It's a little further than my criticism of Cohen would go, but I don't think it's completely unfair. I think it has to do with the casino and all of that. I do think I'll put it this way. I think if you're sitting there going, Cohen doesn't care about the Mets at all, and he only wants the casino, and now he's not going to do anything to make the Mets good, I think that's too far. He cares about the Mets enough, and it's clear he's putting his money where his mouth is. And, this is a guy who's over 70 years old who, when he bought the Mets, it was going to be a difficult chance to even get the casino. And now that the casino's been approved, it's not going to be open for another 4 or 5 years, and this guy's over 70. So, is it all about the casino? No. But do I think he cares about the casino as much? Yeah. He's a billionaire, dude. That's what billionaires do. Billionaires acquire money. They acquire stuff, stocks, equity. That's what they do. They just, how much more can I make? How much more can I take? That's what they do. Again, I'm happy as a Mets fan. I don't want to turn this into something it shouldn't be. This is a sports show. As a Mets fan, I'm happy the Mets have the richest owner in the sport because we had the Wilpons who were horrendous. They were dishonest, disingenuous, and cash poor. So I'm happy they have a guy who can rival the spending with anybody. It's great. It's great that every year, no matter what you guys might think about David Stearns or the strategy or whatever, every year the Mets are in it with the biggest free agents. You're not going to get all of them, but, we just got a great one last year in Juan Soto. How quickly we forget. It's never happening unless somebody like Steve Cohen owns the team. But, I think it's fair to say I don't think it's all sunshine and rainbows. Good thought here. Don't forget Soto does have an opt-out after 5 years. He does. I'd be surprised. You never know. I'd be surprised if Soto exercises that opt-out. The Mets have made this contract so lucrative for Soto that it seems, and I think there's also a thing where if he opts out, the Mets can basically get him to opt in by adding a year, and then that's how the deal gets up from $765 to $805. So I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be opting out, not in a meaningful way. It might be a technicality, but I don't think. I don't think Soto is. I think he finishes his career as a Met. Joshua says we would have gotten a first-round pick for Diaz with the qualifying offer, but since we're over the tax, I think we get a fourth. Yeah, it's a compensatory pick that comes later. These are the things you have to juggle. And again, Mets fans don't want to hear that part of it, right? Mets fans don't want to, just sign this guy, just sign that guy, just do this, just do that. Kind of like the way we started with the Cohen stuff today on this episode. Steve Cohen, David Stearns, they have to factor in some of this stuff. They do have to factor in, okay, well, we lost a player, we got a draft pick back, but we're over the tax. It's not as high as a pick as it would have been. And now if we sign a player like King or like Gallen, now we have to give up more picks. They're dealing with all this, man. Their chessboard is enormous. They're the guy in front of all the screens, and they're looking at monitoring all this stuff all at once. It's Morgan Freeman, Lucius Fox in The Dark Knight Rises. You're watching all of these screens all at once, trying to keep tabs on everything that's happening. Shout out Stellar J, who's a Yankee fan, but a friend of mine, known a long time, goes back to college. So thank you for jumping in, saying, oh, he's definitely more of a Wilson Fisk, talking about Steve Cohen. Odd Villain, extending the invite to Carson when you're in Queens. Let's get drunk. Odd, I don't know if he's still here, but you might have to wait and re-extend that invitation. I think this is fair. Yeah, Keith, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm happy you kind of summed it up, but this is what I was getting at. So I hope it came out this way. Media Goon says, I'm a realist on Cohen. I even was before the casino. That's true. I've known Keith a long time as well. And that's very, very fair. Armand saying, don't blame Cohen for the casino. He got the idea from the Braves, who have an area called the Battery that have hotels and restaurants that make money. That money is not part of the revenue sharing. Listen, the Patriots have Patriot Place in Foxborough, right? We talked about the casino a little bit a couple weeks ago on this show, and I think people kind of misconstrued some of what, like, I'm anti the casino because I think institutions like casinos cause more harm than good for communities. Now, when you take an aerial view, either literally or figuratively, and look at the area around Citi Field, and you realize that there's nothing there, right? We all joke about the chop shops and the tire shops and all the stuff that's been there the whole time, going back to the Shea Stadium days, going back to my days as a younger fan, and even further than that. So I know there's not a lot of great stuff. So I am for anything that's going to make that area more of a destination. I don't care about the money Cohen makes, right? Like, I don't care about that. But just for Mets fans, right? I'm a Mets fan. You guys are Mets fans. I am for something that makes the area better and gives us, bars, restaurants, nightlife, whatever. I'm anti the casino aspect of it because casinos bring with them a lot of bad stuff, man. You want to see crime shoot up? Build a casino. You want to see illicit drug use? Build a casino. You want to see, everything ticks up. It all ticks up in terms of, like, you just do any kind of survey of any place that's added a casino. It's not great. And then you look at the impact that it just has on people who are going to irresponsibly gamble. I'm not much of a gambler. I'm also not an addictive personality person, but I empathize. Or rather, I sympathize. But yeah, man, I think, it would have been really amazing. Would have been really amazing to see Cohen invest in the infrastructure around Citi Field without having a casino attached to it. We didn't get that. Joshua saying, yeah, I'm anti-casino too, but I'm not going to make it my life's effort to get rid of it. It's there and not going anywhere, so whatever. I think that's fair. Kind of got to pick your battles sometimes, guys. I don't want to, I don't want to be that guy of, like, defeatist, like, oh, it's not going to matter. But, like, in this case, it's not going to matter. They got greenlit. They're going to build it. It's going to be there. I've said my piece. That's why I don't want to spend too much time on it. You know what I mean? Keith Blacknick, shout out Media Goon, $2 on a super chat. By the way, super chat's always available on this show and on Till Mets Do His Part. If you want to make sure your comment gets read, make sure your question gets answered, make sure that you get heard and seen and all of that fun stuff, you can throw a super chat. Guarantees that either on this show I will address it, or on Till Mets Do His Part, me and Ibby will address it. Keith saying the Wilpons building restaurants, shops, and schools. I wish it was just that. I do. Brad saying Cohen already said that he wouldn't have continued with Metropolitan Park without a casino. Right. That's what I mean. Like, that's where I'm like, that sucks. Because he has the money, dude. That's the thing. Like, I'm trying not to turn this into, like, John's views on socioeconomics and policy and politics, which, if you follow me on social media, you know where they are. But I will say this, like, guys who are as rich as Cohen have the money to just do it because they can. Like, they can just build it. So yeah. We'll get off that and go back to the baseball side of things. Thank you, Joshua, for bringing this up. John, would you rather trade for Contreras or try to sign Okamoto? Both would play first. Man, this is a good one. I like Contreras. It seems like maybe that Contreras ship has sailed when they signed Polanco, although I don't know why, because I do agree that the Mets need a surer thing at first base. I think Polanco is a ball player. I think Polanco is an athlete. I know he's a bad defensive player, but he's very athletic, came up as a shortstop. I think that guy can play first base. You know what I mean? Like, I think that guy can learn how to play first base. But I also think that Polanco, who got the lion's share of his at-bats last year in Seattle at DH, played some second base, very little third base, and like a percentage of one game at first base. I think he'd be better served moving around the diamond. That's what I think. I think he'd be better served getting the bulk of his at-bats at DH. You play a little first. Maybe you get Semien off his feet a couple times. Obviously, Semien is a guy who's used to playing 162 games or right there. Last year, fluke injury, fouled the ball off his leg, broken foot or whatever. That's fluky. I expect Semien to be back playing, 150, 155 games or more. So you're not going to need to take him off his feet as much. Lindor likes to play every day. I do think Polanco gives you a little bit of a safety net if Brett Baty can't play. If Brett Baty is the guy who had a weighted runs created plus of negative 25 like he did to start last season, instead of the guy who finished the season and looked like, okay, this could be a major league contributor. But to your point, Joshua, I know I'm asking this in a roundabout way. If you don't sign a guy who can play first base, you can't really do that. You don't have the luxury of protecting yourself for Brett Baty, right? Because then Polanco's your first baseman or first base / DH. And then that means the other role in the short term goes to who? Vientos? So now what if Vientos is bad and Baty is bad? Now what? Now you're not covered. So that's the long version of the answer. Short version is I think they need someone else too, whether it's Contreras or Okamoto. I like Okamoto. I do. I was having this debate with somebody else, and fortunately we won't have to have it for long because Murakami's deadline to sign a deal is Monday. So just a couple days, we're going to know whether the Mets get in on it or not and where that whole situation goes. But I think this Contreras or Okamoto debate is good to have. I think you can also have the Murakami Okamoto debate. I will say this. I think the Mets could really use a player like Okamoto. So if I had to rank them, and I like all three guys to a degree, the way this team is being built, I would put Okamoto first. I would put Murakami second. I would put Contreras third. That's how I would rank them. Because I think Okamoto is a guy whose floor is higher than Murakami's. His ceiling might be lower, but his floor is higher. There's a sort of understood baseline of what you're going to get from him. And I think Contreras is fine, but he's a little bit older than Okamoto even. Obviously, Murakami is the youngest player of the bunch. But Contreras is a guy who's going to play first base and maybe DH a little bit. Obviously, he started out as a catcher. You don't want him back there in an emergency situation. In case of emergency, break glass, you could throw him back there probably if both your catchers get hurt and you need a guy to finish the game. You could probably do that. But he's going to first base and DH. Okamoto's a guy who won the equivalent of the Gold Glove in Japan at third base. Do I think he'll be a Gold Glove third baseman in the major leagues? Probably not. But do I think that speaks volumes to the fact that his defense is good enough at third so that he can play a good enough first and you can also put him in the corner outfields? Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a guy who profiles as a guy that Stearns would like. I just told you one of the reasons why I think the Mets signed Polanco is because he can cover for third, he can cover for second, he can play first base, they believe, not just DH, even though he might do the bulk of DHing. Who have the Mets been linked to all offseason? Cody Bellinger. Why? Because he plays in elite left field and elite center field. He can throw on a first base glove, come there, play first base at a very high level, although that probably hurts his overall value a little bit. But he comes in, plays first base, and he can also play a passable center field. That's important. It's important to have guys like that. So I guess to answer this question flat out, I would prefer Okamoto. And I didn't mean to be super long-winded on it, but I had to work it out in my brain, honestly. I would prefer Okamoto 1. After that, I would take the swing on Murakami. I know there are some very troubling things about certain aspects of his game. And, look, he could be Joey Gallo or he could be Kyle Schwarber. He could be somewhere in between. He's that kind of a profile. He's a bad fielder who is a 3 true outcomes player. But I think his power is legit. Top tier. Do I think he'll hit 50 home runs in the major leagues? Maybe not, but he might hit 40. And that's legit, right? You want to replace Pete Alonso? Now, will he do it immediately? Probably not. Are there going to be growing pains? I think so. So, and it's clear something's going on with his market because his deadline is Monday at 5 p.m. and we haven't really heard a ton. So I think teams are a little scared. But he's also 25 years old. 25. 25 that's another thing that's enticing, man. Because listen, a lot of old school baseball fans don't like this, but I just call it what it is. Use my perspective but it's both my perspective and it's where baseball is and where baseball continues to go. A 3 true outcome player is not bad by any stretch, as long as they're elite at it, right? Like Kyle Schwarber can hit 218. If he hits 45 home runs and knocks in 120, but also has an on-base percentage of 400 or higher, that's incredible. That's so much value. It's Adam Dunn, and you got to put respect on Adam Dunn's name. If he was playing now, that guy be a superstar. He was doing this when teams weren't valuing that. There's a lot of value in that. But if you start to eliminate one of those, the thing is you have to kind of be elite at all 3 things. You have to have elite power. You have to have a knack to drive in a ton of runs. And you have to have an elite willingness and ability to walk and get on base, which is why Schwarber is excellent. If you take away that walk tool, then you're Gino Suarez. And you look at him and you look at where his market is, he ain't getting the contract that Kyle Schwarber is getting. And this is a guy who's not a good third baseman, but like Kyle Schwarber, everybody knows is just the DH. Don't even bother giving him a glove. Suarez is more like Alonso, where it's like, okay, he's not a good defensive player, but we can put him out there. Suarez is not going to get paid like that because he doesn't walk. So he has to hit home runs because he strikes out a ton. And sometimes he strikes out too much to even hit the home runs that you expect. Like he's had some big home run years, and then he's had some years where you're like, all right, well, I'll take your 225 or 250 strikeouts. If you're going to hit 48 home runs, I'll take it. But I don't know if I can take it if you're going to hit 28 home runs. So that's where it starts to get dicey. Brad saying Bo Bichette is definitely Stearns type of player, and he's in the age group. I agree, but because he's athletic and he's versatile, and he's young. He's 26, I believe. I just don't know if he's a couple things. I think he's going to get paid being one of the better free agents, and because of his age, I think he's going to get paid a little bit more than he's worth, quote unquote worth, because I don't think he's like an elite player. I like him, but I don't think he's like a great player. So I don't think he's the guy that David Stearns wants to tether to Juan Soto for 10 years and be like, those are superstars, as Lindor, kind of fades more into the background because obviously he's not a peer of Soto in terms of age. So I think he's looking for the right player to pair with Soto. The unfortunate thing is that Bo Bichette's former teammate, who might continue to be his teammate, signed an extension. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He was the guy. He was the perfect guy. Mets tried to get him last year. Couldn't get him. Then he signs the extension. We had Manny Gomez on till Mets do his part, who no longer covers the Mets for the New Jersey Advance, but did then and did for a while. And he was like, I'm not reporting, but just everything I know, everything I see, everything I'm hearing about the plan of the Mets. Juan Soto, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they look at it, they say we could have 10 years of the new version of Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz. That's what they wanted. Couldn't do it. It is what it is. I like this one. Batting average ain't shit anymore. That's true. I think, batting average is fine. but it's not the only metric. It's not the be all end all. It can't be. I will say this. I don't think any stat is like completely useless. The people who have devalued batting average to a fault, I think people have devalued it too much. It's almost like batting average in Major League Baseball is a little bit like running backs in the NFL. I understand why it's taken a back seat, but then like go ahead and have a really good football team that can win a Super Bowl and have nothing at running back, and you're in a bad way. So like, does that mean you spend your number 3 overall pick in the draft on a running back? No, I think you can find those guys because they've been devalued league wide. But I think you need to have someone there who is a representative runner. I think with batting average, it's sort of the same thing. If you're Kyle Schwarber, just to use the example, just to keep it in-house with the same people I've been referencing. If you're Kyle Schwarber and you're getting on base at a 400 clip and you're hitting, I think he averaged a 40-something home runs with Philadelphia over the life of this contract before he just re-upped. You're going to average 40 home runs, and you're going to have an on-base percentage around 400, and you're going to hit well over 100 RBIs. We don't care what your batting average is. Sure. Would we like it to be 230 or 240 and not 210? Yeah, but we don't care. If you're Suarez and you're 1 year 48 home runs, next year 30 home runs, next year 27 home runs, next year 50 home runs, and you're striking out 200 and something times every year, and your on-base percentage is 300, now your batting average matters a little bit more. So, you take it. Media Goon. Whiskey check? Thank you. Doing all right. Still trying to find the balance of making sure I don't drink too fast or too slow. I think, though, where I'm at, this is good. I don't mind. I said I wanted the show to be like 35 to 45 minutes. I don't mind if the show's an hour. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, the show was like an hour 10, hour 15. Because I was just talking to you guys, and I was like, I haven't been drinking. So that kind of defeats the purpose of the show. Armand saying Bo is 27, turns 28 on March 5th. Thank you. I was a little off on his age. I knew it was somewhere in that ballpark. We have Brad saying Suarez might work because he can get less than 3 years or less. Maybe. Listen, I know I just kind of dragged Suarez a little bit. Suarez scares me in a bigger market too, a little, just to be fair. But if the Mets add another player who is a better average bat, not batting average, just a better, let me say it this way, a more well-rounded bat. If the Mets add another well-rounded bat and Suarez is sticking around out there and we're getting closer to spring training and you can get Suarez and just say, hey, man, we got Juan Soto. He's going to do what he does. He's great. We got Francisco Lindor. He's going to do what he does. He's great. We got Cody Bellinger, let's just say. Very complete hitter, right? Like he's just a good hitter, good left on left, offers you a lot offensively. And you try to get Suarez and you're just like, listen, man, we don't care how much you strike out. Hit 40, hit 45, drive in 100. Play a little third base, play a little DH. Here's a 1-year deal, whatever, or here's a, 1+1 or an option or an opt-out or whatever the hell. I'll take what he can give you, but I don't want that unless the Mets add another well-rounded bat. I know some of you guys don't like Bellinger. If that other well-rounded bat is, Okamoto, then that's fine too. But then that complicates things because if you have Polanco and you have Okamoto, you already have Brett Beatty and you don't trademark Vientos, where does Suarez fit? Because you need one of those bats to be in the outfield. Unless you're going to say, well, Okamoto can play, left field most of the time. I know he plays in the corner outfield some. I don't know. I don't watch Japanese baseball, so I don't truly know. But I don't know if like left field or right field is a position he can play 5 or 10 times a year, or if he can be out there fully. My point is, if you get a more complete hitter somewhere else, I think you can maybe take a swing on just going after the power for Suarez. So I do think in a way he does fit. I don't think that's completely unfair. Josh was saying, I don't want Gino. Sorry. That's fair. Listen, odd villain Suarez might be whack here. Not going to lie. Yeah. Again, I think for everything I just said, I think it has to be the right situation. You're going to have to get me one more bat that is more complete. And I would consider Polanco to be along the lines of a complete bat, right? He's a switch hitter. He's got good numbers versus left, good numbers versus right. He's got good power. He has good bat speed. He makes a lot of contact. He doesn't strike out. Like that, to me, you don't have to be the perfect hitter. You don't have to get me another Juan Soto, but get me another complete hitter. And if that's Okamoto or if that's Bellinger or whatever, then we can entertain Suarez. Odd villain. This is why we're friends. I would be, I know some of you guys are down on Bellinger. I would be ecstatic if the Mets did Okamoto and Bellinger. I would be ecstatic. That is such a good add to what this team already is. Now, obviously the money is always a factor, right? Like, listen, I'm not giving Bellinger 8 years, right? I'm not giving Bellinger 7 years. I'm not giving Bellinger 6 years, to Joshua's point. My problem is with Bellinger is that he's going to get a massive contract. Yeah. 6 years is ridiculous. But I will say this to you guys. I don't know if the Mets are going to do this, right? And if you're new to the show, let me preface this by saying I understand, just as an example, I understand why the Mets didn't retain Alonso, and I understand why the Mets didn't retain Diaz. John, if I ran the team, I would have given both guys the deals that they signed. I would have given Alonso the deal he signed. I would have given Diaz the deal he signed. I know the Diaz stuff comes with some baggage, but just me, I would have given those guys those deals. And I say that to say this. I'm not saying that the Mets are going to do this. For Bellinger, I think 6 years and anything beyond that is ridiculous. However, I think Bellinger is athletic enough, and I think he's proven to be a healthy enough player that John, not David Stearns, John, I wouldn't shy away from a 5-year deal with Bellinger. I'd like it to be less. But if you told me right now that the Mets could sign Bellinger for, I don't know, $150, we can do the AAV, we can whatever. Is it 5 years? Probably less than 150, because if you're giving him the security, you're not going to give him that AAV. Probably closer to 25 a year. But you know what I'm saying? I would give him a 5-year deal, and I wouldn't be horrified by it. Brad agreeing, Brad 4532, not to be confused with the other Brad. I would have done that. So, I would give him 5 years. I would. Listen, if you watch Till Mets do his part, I like Bellinger, and I think Bellinger adds a lot to this team. Do I think he's going to hit as many home runs with the Mets as he did with the Yankees? No. But I think everything else he does will be the same. He's still going to be a good bat left on left. He's still going to hit his home runs. He's still going to play an athletic, above average defense in the corners and all that stuff. So, Brad saying Bellinger has been inconsistent to trust with a long-term contract. That's true. But to me, I would do 5. I wouldn't want to. Again, I would rather pay Bellinger $30 million a year for 3 years than $25 million, let's say, a year for 5 years. I'd rather them just throw more money on the short end. But the 5 years wouldn't scare me. Anything beyond 5 years, I'd say no, and I would just walk away. but 5 years wouldn't scare me. The other Brad Fear now. Brad Fear? Is it Fear now? Is that your last name or is it Brad Fear now? I don't know. I want to know. Saying I would give Belly 5 years, but Stearns would not. So it really all depends. The last thing, I put it in the ticker, and I want to ask you guys this because I don't have a lot of drink left. I just want your opinion. Not the ticker. I put it on the YouTube banner, the thumbnail. Do you care that the Mets continue to add ex-Yankees? We talked a little bit about it on Till Mets Do His Part on Wednesday. Me, Ibby, and we had a great guest, Dexter Henry, who works over at the New York Post and does the Straight Outta Flushing podcast, which is a great show. Do you guys care? Because I don't. I don't care today. I don't care tomorrow. I won't care next week, next month, next year. I want good baseball players to make a good baseball team. I want the team to be as good as possible every single year. I don't care where the players come from. I don't care if they're homegrown, not homegrown. If they come from the Bronx, they don't come from the Bronx. I don't care where they come from. I've said it on Till Mets Do His Part. I don't care if the players come from Jupiter on a spaceship. I don't care, dude. I think it's very odd. It's very odd. And I think some Mets fans are making a big deal about it, but not really. I think Yankee fans are making more of a big deal about it, which is funny because I do think that the Soto thing really kind of broke Yankee fans in a way that we're not expecting. Thank you, Brad, saying his last name exactly how it's spelled. Thank you. Appreciate that. I just wasn't sure. I looked at it real quick and I was like, well, there's no spaces. I don't know. Could just be a handle, but thank you. Joshua says not at all. He's adding players who can handle playing in New York. That was a big plus for me when we talked about the Devin Williams signing a couple weeks ago. This is a guy who could have just left. He had a bad year. Under the hood numbers were good. To me, poised, primed for a bounce back. But this guy had 5 offers on the table besides the Mets. And a bunch of them, maybe all 5 were to close somewhere. He could have been like, you know what? New York is fucking crazy. I don't need this. I don't need this bullshit. I was elite in Milwaukee. I can go to, I don't know which teams offered him contract. I'll go to Kansas City. I'll go to Tampa. I'll go to Anaheim. I'll go to Texas. Any place that's not New York, and I could be the closing pitcher and it'd be great. He stayed. Give me that guy. Give me the guy that wants to stay, dude. 100%. And yes, second part of this, which I didn't actually read yet, but thank you. We're sharing a brain. And before people say Devin can't play in New York, he adapted very well down the stretch. He also had great under the hood numbers. Great. We have Milo saying, I don't care. Yankees have been to the playoffs consistently, and it seems like the players are coming over or at least serviceable. I would hate signing crappy players. That's the other side of it that I think is funny. The Mets have signed some like really good players from the Yankees, just in the Cohen era. I know it's always been a thing back and forth. We talked about this on Wednesday where it's like, you know what, man? There's only 30 teams. You're going to go somewhere. So you just wind up across town. Doesn't really matter. But I think one of the things that's interesting is that just in the Cohen era, the Mets have signed like quality, meaningful players from the Yankees. Obviously, Juan Soto being at the top of the list, but like Clay Holmes has been a really good signing. I think he's going to, like, now that he's adjusted to being a starter, I think I was very bullish on the signing when they did it. I think he had a really good year. I think he's going to have an even better year in year 2 as a starter. Luke Weaver's got good numbers, man. He's got good stuff. Again, same like Devin Williams, the stuff under the hood is good. I think Devin Williams is primed to be a bounce back. These are good ball players. On the other side of things, the Yankees have signed Carlos Carrasco, Paul Blackburn, trying to make Ahmed Rosario a first baseman, J.D. Davis, Dom Smith. That, I hate to use this word, but that's the one that sounds like sloppy seconds to me. Keith Blacknick saying, I just want the Mets to pick up players that will help the team. They can be from the sun for all I care. I agree. Brad saying Weaver is a depth signing. I disagree. He says they need bullpen arms, which I agree with. I think they need at least one more. If they weren't Yankees, people wouldn't care. And then Yankee fans can suck it. Fine. I don't think Weaver is a depth signing. I think Weaver is going to be firmly in the mix to be at the back end of the bullpen for the Mets. 100%. Joshua saying Luke Weaver came back too quickly. I'm expecting a sub 350 ERA from him, which is solid. I do think so. I think he never quite got right after, was it a hamstring injury, I think? Kept him out because he was lights out before it. And then he came back and he was terrible. And then down the stretch, just like mechanically was off, maybe tipping pitches a bit, which I know Mets fans don't want to hear about because of Ryan Helsley. But you know what? You know who else was tipping pitches in a Yankee uniform and then had a really good year? Luis Severino, which is another one that paid dividends. Only 1 year, but and then on the flip side of it, thanks, Aunt Rivera, shout out Subway to Shea, Marcus Stroman. The Yankees signed Marcus Stroman, dude. Come on. It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, looks like we got about one sip left. You know how it goes. Take the sip. Basically, show is over. We'll get our last thoughts in from you guys. Armand saying, yes, hamstring injury. Thank you. Keith Blacknick, the media goon, saying, Mr. Good Attitude Stroman. Marcus Stroman was a guy who I long defended prior to coming to the Mets, while he was on the Mets. I thought, and I think this is still the case a little bit. I think Marcus Stroman's a bit misunderstood. I do. I think a lot of people don't know what to do sometimes with like flashy young black athletes. And that's what Marcus Stroman is. Like, he exudes confidence. So I do think there's a part of him that's misunderstood, but I also think Marcus Stroman's a dick. Like, I think it can be both, man. I think it could be both. At the other or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if he became more guarded and more harsh because he was getting the kind of like criticism that he was getting, the slings and arrows or whatever, or if, you know, he was kind of just always surly and that had people like, you know, kind of responding in kind. Keith Blacknick is saying that Stroman wasn't like growing up in Long Island. I'll take Keith at his word, but I don't know that to be the case. This is Odd Villain. Mark Healy doesn't like Marcus Stroman. Odd. People who know me personally, Aunt Rivera, Keith Blacknick, Odd Villain, like, you guys know what I'm saying. Like, you guys know what I'm saying about Stroman. Like, it's the same. It's also because he plays a position where you don't see like a lot of, like, currently in baseball, you don't see a lot of black men in like the starting pitching role. Like and at one point he was a top of the rotation starter, or at the very least a middle of the rotation starter who, you know, had some really good years that pushed him up a bit more. And I just think that sometimes people don't know how to handle that. Like, I think fans don't know how to, like, yeah, you know, he's just, like I said, he's a confident, flashy young black man. And I don't know if people know how to deal with that. But at the same time, I think he might be a little bit of an asshole. I think it could be both. Guys, I do. I do think it could be both. I do appreciate Odd Villain saying I'd be the exact same way if I was Stroman, literally. I'd be talking mad shit and getting under people's skin. I feel like you would. But I love that self-awareness, man. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think sometimes, and in fairness, and this will be the last thing we'll get out of here, I think sometimes, because I like cocky players. I like the swagger that certain players bring. But I think to Aunt Rivera's point here, saying like he had false bravado, Stroman, I think sometimes like you can push it and it gets under people's skin. And like, it's not the confidence. It's the like, you could be confident, man. You can even be cocky, but like, then don't be a dick on top of it. So anyway, I don't want to talk anymore about Marcus Stroman. It doesn't really make sense. But guys, I appreciate you joining. I said I didn't want the show to be an hour and 10. Here we are, hour and 10. I either need to pour less whiskey or drink faster. I don't know. If you guys like the hour show, we'll do the hour show. Stroman or McNeil. Yeah. McNeil's also a dick. I think, let me put it in perspective. Let me just say this. A lot of people say that Jeff McNeil is fiery, like Bryce Harper. He's not fiery like Bryce Harper. McNeil is a crybaby. Bryce Harper plays like his hair's on fire. Bryce Harper like goes to war for his team. Jeff McNeil throws his helmet on the floor because he hit a 70-mile-an-hour ground out to shortstop with 2 men on. It's not the same. They are not the same. Yeah, thank you, Keith. Keith keeping it real. Saying, well, McNeil's a dick too. Armand, thank you. Saying, great show. I appreciate you guys. Next week, real quick, couple housekeeping things. First of all, I do want to shout out Stephanie, Stadium Beads, over on Instagram and on Twitter. For the last 2 QBCs has been giving out some amazing stuff. She has the LFGM and the OMG from last year. And then this year at the QBC, she gave me and Ibby, she gave a bunch of people stuff, but she gave me and Ibby a personalized Till Mets Do Us Part. It's got SAP on it, so it's got my name on it. She gave Ibby one that said Ibby, Till Mets Do Us Part, which is really great. So check out Stadium Beads. Really nice gesture. She's giving them to players. She's giving them to the people at the QBC. She's giving them to Mets players and Mets personalities when she's traveled. Really cool stuff. Really appreciate it. So shout out to Stadium Beads. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media at Till Mets Do Us Part. That's on Instagram. It's on Twitter. It's on Substack. It's on TikTok. It's on Blue Sky. Social media, you find us anywhere if you just search Till Mets Do Us Part. This channel. The reason why I bring all that up is because we're getting into the time of year. Ibby and I don't take weeks off. We do the show all the time. However, our next show is supposed to be Wednesday. Wednesday is Christmas Eve. We're not going to do a show on Wednesday. We're trying to decide between his schedule and my schedule which day works better. Maybe it's going to be Tuesday. Maybe not. Maybe hit the damn like button, you sumbitches. Maybe the show's going to be Tuesday. Maybe the show's going to be Friday. We don't know. So if you subscribe on this YouTube channel, you turn notifications on, you'll know when we're going live. If you follow us on social media, we always post about when we're doing a show. If there's going to be an emergency show, if there's going to be a schedule change. And so this time of year, for the next 2 weeks, it's important if you want to be a part of the live show. If you missed the live show, you can come back. You can watch it on replay, whether it's Walk Off Whiskey or Till Mets Do Us Part. You could also get an audio version of both shows on Spotify, on Apple, on Amazon Music, all of those places. But if you want to watch live and you want to be a part of the show and you want to get your comments in, then you need to know when we're going live. Usually we do it like clockwork, but this time of year, it messes everything up. So I don't want to sign off in ambiguity, but I will say we don't really know what's going to happen next week yet. The plan right now is to do Till Mets Do Us Part on Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and then I'll do Walk Off Whiskey on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. But if we have to move things around, this show will be knocked out. If we have to move Till Mets Do Us Part to Friday, there will be no Walk Off Whiskey. Till Mets Do Us Part will be in its place. So, like I said, follow us on social media at Till Mets Do Us Part across the entire social media landscape. Subscribe to the show here on Till Mets Do Us Part. Like this video, please, because that helps too. Yeah. And this time of year, it's super important. Merry Christmas. If we don't talk to you on Tuesday, if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you're celebrating Hanukkah right now, Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays all around. I'm John. The glass is empty. See you guys next week.